Yeah, so your whole life since we've been together at least, you've been working a lot, and now you want to take time off. Now I'm working a lot.
Yeah,
so
well.
So you get to go take the vacations.
Thanks, God.
Yeah, so what do you plan on doing the next 5 years, 10 years?
Boy, if I had a plan, it would be the first time in my life I've ever had a plan.
Okay, so that's interesting, because a lot of people think that you do have to create a plan, a 1 year, 6 month, 1 year, 5 year, 10 year, and have goals set for each day. You never did that.
It's like John Lennon says, life is what happens while you're busy making other plans. There's nothing in my life, I can't think of anything that's happened in my life that I ever planned for. And so much of what's happened in my life has been so much better than anything I could have ever planned for. So, plans have never been big for me. I mean, obviously on a day-to-day basis, you got to plan to take care of what needs to be taken care of. But in terms of goals, no, because I think I'm a firm believer in the Zen philosophy that you can go down to the river and you can curse which way the river is flowing, or you can applaud which way the river is flowing, but the river's just going to keep flowing. So you might as well jump in and go with the flow.
Yeah.
And I'm a firm believer that if you show up for life, put one foot in front of the other every day, you're going to end up where you're supposed to be. But it's not necessarily someplace you could ever envision being. I never could have envisioned being a writer. I guess I kind of got sidetracked from telling you that story. Okay, so I came to LA because I wanted to be a performer, the center of attention. And I started doing stand-up, like at the Comedy Store and the Improv and stuff like that. But I also needed a job because you couldn't make a living as a stand-up comic, especially in those days. Guys that were unknown and trying to break through, when I started doing it, were like David Letterman and Jay Leno and Robin. I used to have to follow Robin Williams at the Comedy Store at Westwood. So
that
these guys, these guys weren't making it yet.
Yeah.
It was going to be a long time before I was going to. So I needed a job. And like many people who come to Los Angeles, I came with a list of family, friends, and acquaintances that had some connection to show business. And one of the guys was a guy named Ben Jolson, whose brother did my father's car insurance in New York. And he was a television writer. And he and his partner had just gotten a job working on a new show called The Love Boat. And Ben was great. He agreed to have lunch with me, and he came to see me do my stand-up. And afterwards he said to me, you're funny. Have you ever considered writing? And I said, no, I hate writing. It's like having a term paper every day of your life. I can't think of anything worse. And then he told me what they were paying writers on The Love Boat. I said, on the other hand.
I love writing. Here's a story right now.
I never said I loved writing, but I was certainly willing to consider it. And God bless Ben, he encouraged me. He sent me scripts. He said, try and come up with some stories, which I did. And, over a period, pitched him stories and eventually came up with one he thought was good enough to bring to the producers. He said, let's see if you can write a scene. And I didn't have a typewriter, I had a legal pad, and I just wrote in longhand, but using the form that I'd seen in the scripts. I wrote a Love Boat scene, and I brought it to his house, and he just looked at it, he read it, he said, yeah, you can write. And so the next thing I know, I'm having a story meeting at 20th Century Fox.
And you never studied writing, right?
Never studied writing.
Okay.
Never studied writing. I don't think I did a legitimate term paper in my life. I copied from the encyclopedia, or writing was never on my radar. But it turned out that because I had spent so much of my life vegging in front of the television set, by osmosis, I got a knack of how TV sounds.
The
rhythms, dialogue. I was able to recreate that. And I thought anybody could do it. Apparently, not a lot of people can, because they gave me one assignment on Love Boat, which I wrote, and then they gave me another one, and I wrote it, and then they gave me a third one, which involved the character of the captain's bastard daughter, Vicky, So I created that character, and then they hired me on staff. So all of a sudden I'm going from a broke would-be stand-up comic who's living on, I would go to Safeway and buy a 10-pound bag of potatoes for 69 cents and just live on baked potatoes all week. That's how broke I was. To I got an office in a little bungalow on 20th Century Fox, and I got a pile of cocaine on the glass ashtray next to my typewriter. As Robin Williams said, cocaine is God's way of saying you're making too much money. And, he was right. So yeah, I became a writer totally by accident. Even, for a long time after I was making a living as a writer, if people asked me, what do? I would say I'm a stand-up comic. Even though I was making nothing as a comic, but that's how I identified.
What was your success as a comic? I mean,
What
did
was
you have
none?
any?
None.
Did you have fans or?
No. I was doing, I was just doing late night sets, at clubs or showcases.
People were booing. Boo.
No, nobody was booing, but I had bad nights. I had good nights and bad nights. I opened the one paying gig I got.
Tell me a joke.
Tell you what? I didn't tell jokes.
The
The only jokes I could tell you were jokes from other comics, but I did open for John Lee Hooker, who's an old blues guy, because I knew his manager. His manager actually sold me cocaine. And so she got me this gig opening for John Lee Hooker in Victoria, British Columbia, in Canada. So I go up there, and the thing I didn't realize at the time is everybody in Canada with an actual sense of humor has already moved to the United States. So everybody that's left really has very little sense of humor. And especially the people that were coming to that blues club to see John Lee Hooker that night. So I did 2 nights there, and the first night was horrible. And so the second night, I said to myself, I don't give a damn. I'll say anything. And I started riffing on Margaret Trudeau, who was the first lady of Canada. And somehow they loved that. They ate it up. Yay, And that was my big triumph. And that's basically my professional stand-up comedy career.
Wow, okay.
I did a little audience warm-up, whenever
For TV shows?
Yeah, for like...
For 2.5?
For 2.5, when Mark Sweet wasn't available, the guy who did our warm-up. Because I had this one little bit that I used to do.
Want to share some of that?
Really?
It's my show. My show. My show. You do as I say.
Okay, I'm going to stand up. Can you deal with that? If I stand up? Yes. All right. So, all right. This is something I did 40 years ago. All right. But I talked about how I grew up as a child of television. I really was part of the first television generation. I was born in 1952. And television was basically my mother and my father, and it was really hard getting nourishment trying to suck a horizontal hold knob, But one of my favorite shows growing up was the original Superman show. Do you remember that with George Reeves? Yeah. I loved that show. I loved the way the opening of it was so dramatic. He goes, faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. And then this guy goes, look, up in the sky, it's a bird. He thinks it's a bird? I wonder about this guy. I wonder about anybody that is that fascinated with the mundane that he would go, look, up in the sky, it's a bird. Imagine living with this guy. You'd be walking down the street, right? All of a sudden, look, down on the sidewalk, it's a gum wrapper. What if this guy was married? His honeymoon must have been a panic, right? Look, 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 all night long.
I have to say, you're probably one of the most boring guests I've had.
So I'm available for weddings and bar mitzvahs.
Well, thank you very much for coming on my show.
That's it?
I really
You're done with
appreciate it.
me?
Everybody, Lee Aronsohn.